China's warning to international students. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Got my stein of coffee. I thought we'd have a look at this article from the ABC that's discussing China's warnings to their students about incidents here in Australia and steering them away from returning to our nation. Now, this can have a big impact on Australia for a number of reasons. We'll look here. This is data from the Department of Home Affairs. We can see the total number of Chinese students holding student visas was, at the time of Feb this year, over 188,000. Over 188,000. And if we look here at this article, we'll scroll down and it discusses just overseas student fees, who are not all from China, but a big chunk of them are, how much revenue it brings for our universities. Look at the University of Sydney. They're at the top, 884 million. Then Melbourne, 879. Monash, 851. UNSW, 712. UQ, 572. Then RMIT, it goes down. Where's my alumni? QT, we're there too. So our university sector is heavily reliant on this income stream. It's heavily reliant on this income stream. And the question to be considered, well, you've got warnings here from China. You've got the Australian dollar getting quite high. The US dollar's going down. Remember, in some ways, with regards to international education, we're the poor man's United States. You can learn English, you can be exposed to Western culture, you can get a decent education. Would you rather go over to the US than Australia? What would sound more prestigious? We'll have to see. The only thing we've got going for us is that our management of the pandemic has been quite good. So let's have a look at this. China cautions students about racist incidents during the pandemic if they return to Australia. And here's the sad thing. You're always going to have this, guys. You're always going to have racist incidents. Just part of life, okay? You learn to deal with it. There's a lot of stupid people out there. And, I mean, come on. It's ludicrous to think that it won't happen. And it's from old cultures to all cultures. It's not just one culture to another. That's reality. If you don't realize that, you're not that smart. Sorry. Or you've lived in a bubble. You've lived in a bubble. China's Education Bureau has taken the rare step of warning Chinese students about studying in Australia when campuses are set to resume classes in July due to racist incidents during the pandemic. In its statement, the Education Minister reminded overseas students to conduct a good risk assessment and be cautious about choosing to go to Australia or return to Australia to study. The notice also warned students the pandemic still presents a risk if they plan to resume their studies overseas. There are more Chinese students at Australian universities than from any other country. There you have it. Most international students returned home or were unable to enter Australia when the federal government banned travel from several countries, including China, in February. About 1.5 million university students are expected to be back on campus in July to resume face-to-face tutorials. But the Chinese Education Bureau's notice, which has been published widely in Chinese state media, warns students about racist incidents against Asians during the pandemic crisis. In response to the announcement, Education Minister Dan Tehan rejected the assertion that Australia is unsafe for international students. Australia is a popular destination for international students because we're a successful, multicultural society that welcomes international students and provides a world-class education, he said in a statement to the ABC. Our success at flattening the pandemic curve means we are one of the safest countries in the world for international students to be based in right now. But the other concern is, do these international students present a clear and present risk to a second wave? We'll have to see what happens. So Chinese students say they have faced discrimination. 2 Chinese students already studying in Sydney told the ABC the Education Bureau's warnings would not have any effect on their study plans. I've heard of racist incidents, but I haven't been out much during the pandemic, so personally I haven't been affected, said Sydney University student Yu Yan. Discrimination towards Asians in Australia has always existed. This time, it gives them an excuse, she said. Well, yeah, she's right. She's right. You're always going to have that, guys. It's reality. It is reality. And the best way to deal with that is simply to allow people open discourse and dialogue, to not give any group special privileges, to allow criticism of some aspects of other cultures so they can merge together, so they can adapt and change. We need to remove all these protections and free speech issues because, frankly, having no, treating some cultures as having no resilience is racist and quite insulting. And, if you're being a dick and assaulting someone, we've got mechanisms in place to deal with that. It's a crime. Another student based in Hobart, Michelle Wren, also had heard of recent racism, but hasn't personally been affected. It's not uncommon. It's very few people who do that, and very few people who experience that, she said. But I've had a lot of friends and family in China who are worried. They ask me what the real situation is in Australia. So here's the thing. It's just the media pushing a narrative. It's the media pushing a narrative. They're quite worried. The relationship between China and Australia is not that good, so it might negatively affect students thinking about coming here. And this is the thing, it's going to be the parents that are funding these students to come over here from China that are going to make the final decision, that are going to be affected. And this is going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact on our property industry. And 1.5 million, 180,000 Chinese students who suddenly stop turning up to university, that's going to have an impact on the economy. China also want tourists to stay away from Australia. And tourism is a big sector here in Australia. I'll bring up this chart here. You can see over 660,000 employees. Big portion of our GDP. Bigger than iron ore. Bigger than coal. $60 billion. So if that sector takes a hit. The relationship between Australia and China appears to have shifted in the last few months after the federal government proposed an international inquiry in how the pandemic emerged. Since then, China has imposed tariffs on some of Australia's imports, including barley. This is the second Chinese government agency in a week to warn citizens about Australia. The Chinese Minister of Culture and Tourism issued a travel warning to citizens on June 6th about the dangers of travelling to Australia due to a significant increase in racist attacks on Chinese and Asian people. Due to the impact of the pandemic, racial discrimination and violence against Chinese and Asian people in Australia have seen a significant increase, the statement said. The Minister of Culture and Tourism reminds Chinese tourists to enhance their safety awareness and do not travel to Australia. But Australian Tourism Minister Simon Birmingham said the Chinese government's claims about the dangers for tourists were false. We reject China's assertions in this statement, which have no basis in fact, he said. Australia is enjoying world-leading success in suppressing the spread of the pandemic, and when the health advice allows, we look forward to again welcoming visitors from all backgrounds to our safe and hospitable nation. But here's the thing, are these visitors potentially increasing our risk of a second wave again? So they'll hold off on it for some time. And by then, all of this hoo-ha may disappear. This could just be media boistering or political machinations to achieve other aims and to, scare Australia a bit. What do you reckon? In April, 2 Melbourne University students were allegedly verbally abused and physically assaulted after a pair of women screamed coronavirus at them and told them to get out of the country. I mean, you're going to have idiots everywhere. Guys, particularly in Melbourne, it's a very left state. That's unfair. They'd virtual signal. They'd be defacing statues and things like that. Isn't that's what's happening now? The two warnings from government agencies come as China launches a propaganda blitz through its state media, lashing Australia for its attitude towards China. China's nationalistic tabloid, The Global Times, has led the way with frequent articles putting all blame for the deteriorating ties on Australia. It has cited everything from Australian concerns about the political situation in Hong Kong, the South China Sea, to banning Huawei from 5G, and more recently calling for an independent inquiry into the pandemic. Well, there you go. What do you think, guys? What do you think? Do you think this will have a material impact on Australia's economy? Or is it just some political positioning? Do you think the students will still come to Australia? Or will they look at other options? Could the US be more affordable? What do you think will happen to all that student accommodation and all those investment properties? If you had a big hit, 180,000 people suddenly stopped coming to Australia every year, or a big chunk of them did, that has to affect the investment. As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you'd like to support the content we create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays. You can use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or you can support us via PayPal. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.